Hi everyone. Today we're watching a video from Paul Joseph Watson titled Europe Prepares for More Cultural Enrichment. So get ready for a healthy dose of racism probably. That's my guess. We'll see what old Paul Joseph Watson has for us.
The Taliban takeover of Afghanistan means that Europe is now facing the risk of another refugee.
Could he get a proper mic? This is nothing about the content of what he said. Please get a it's really echoey. It's a small side note. Loki, cut this out. This is not important for the video.
The influx. How it started, how it ended. This has brought the hashtag refugees welcome crowd out in full force once again. Because it went so well the first time. Seems to be overwhelmingly young men. Don't see many women.
What is this image of? Because the problem with people who like him who are like, look, it's only young men coming over. Look at this image of a horde of young men. And then it's from a completely different context. It's from a completely different place. It has nothing to do with the crisis that's being discussed. I don't know where this image is from, but this smells like one of those situations where this image is being used in a way that it is not related to this topic at all and gives a false idea of what happened with the Syrian refugee crisis.
Women or children, but I suppose they're all doctors or lawyers in waiting, so why should we concern ourselves? Humanitarian.
Also, this this idea that only the men are coming. What's going on with that? Yeah, only the men are coming because usually they come first so that they can get a refugee status in the country, set everything up, and then get their family over. Because usually that's an easier case from my understanding. And this idea I guess they're all doctors or whatever. It's like, who cares? Some of them might be, yeah, sure. What does it matter? If they need a place of refuge, then, who cares? And I guess the implication for him is no, they're all fucking murder. Most of them are murderers and they'll destroy the white Western culture. And it's no, they just need refugee. Many people who seek refugee go back to their home country when it gets more stable. Many people don't, but usually they integrate into society over a few generations.
Development worker Sybil Schneehager told German WDR television on Sunday, quote, "We can assume that up to 3 million Afghans will make their way to Europe in the foreseeable future." Well, what's another 3 million? Get ready to see European cities put up more refugees welcome posters a stone's throw away from diversity barriers.
What? Yeah, I mean, stupid posturing of putting up refugees welcome posters but not actually doing anything is dumb lib shit. Yeah, I agree with him. But is there going to be a lot of refugees from Afghanistan? Probably, yeah. That makes sense considering they've been under war for 20 years and the invading force just fucked off and let the Taliban take over. So yeah, that makes sense. The US should take a shit ton of those refugees, in my opinion, because the US has caused this fucking situation. But most likely, most of the refugees are going to go to the neighboring countries and to the European regions that are closest to those countries. Some, of course, are going to go to places like Germany, the UK, France, the Nordics, but that is not going to be the majority. That's just usually how it goes. They go to the closest places usually first. Or maybe only the men are allowed to come because of the theocratic rule subjugating women back home because colonial imperialist capitalists overthrew the budding leftist government when they're in favor of a brutal theocracy. No. That would never be the case. No, it's because they're bad people. That's why.
Ready to be culturally enriched, but once again the facts contradict the narrative. Afghanistan will probably be more stable under the Taliban than it has during any time in the past 20 years. Most of the...
Wait, hold on, let me see. I need to see if I heard that correct.
The facts contradict the narrative. Afghanistan will probably be more stable under the Taliban than it has during any time in the past 20 years.
Yeah. Because it won't be under war. Of course it will be more stable because it won't be under war. Of course it will. That makes perfect sense. And he said, will probably. I mean, yes, it probably will be. I agree. It will probably be more stable in that there is no war anymore. There's no occupying force there. And there are no there isn't a terrorist group fighting an occupying force because that terrorist force now controls the country. So yes, while it will be more stable, there will be a lot of injustice, there will be a lot of violence, especially against women and other minorities. So he's right But he's framing it as like, well, why should they leave then? It's more stable now. Yes, but it's a brutal, like theocratic regime. Of course they're going to leave. That makes perfect sense.
Most of the Afghan population welcomes the Taliban takeover, and it's over. The war's over.
Wait. Most of the Afghan population welcomes the Taliban takeover? What's the source on that? Look, you can cut this out of me trying to find a source for this, but suffice it to say, I could not find a source for this claim. It seems completely fabricated.
Over. This situation isn't comparable to Syria. And yeah, there are a relatively small number of people who worked for the US in Afghanistan whose lives are under threat. They're genuine refugees. But 3 million people, they're not refugees, they're economic migrants.
Oh, not this bullshit. Oh, I hate this economic migrants bullshit of like people don't actually have a reason to fucking leave. Leave from a brutal theocratic leadership that will suppress women's rights, that will suppress anything other than what they want to see there. Like, it's gonna be just terrible. Will there be 3 million? Maybe. But once again, we don't know. We don't know what the actual number will be yet. That's an estimate. There 3 million in Europe, but again, that doesn't mean all of them will go to Germany. Like, they will be spread out, and most likely most of the refugees, as in the Syria case, went to the bordering countries. And this is probably going to be a similar case. And then there will be people, of course, who come to Europe. That might be that 3 million number. We'll see. But this idea of economic migrants is really annoying and does have a really racist underpinning of trying to see refugees as, trying to take advantage of Europe and trying to take advantage of white people, where they just want a chance at a stable life. No, they will all come to Finland. This is great replacement. We have to weaponize the border. So what's the population of Europe? Is 3 million a large population of Europe's population? No. It's certainly not. Like, we can check. The European population is 746 million in 2018. So yeah, it is definitely not a huge number. And again, they're not all going to the UK. They're not all going to Germany or France or Spain. They're going to spread out as it has gone before. It's less than 0.5%. You don't understand. Not only those who worked with the US, pretty much everyone who worked with any Western Party humanitarian workers included are at risk. Yes, exactly.
As Taliban spokesman Suhail Shaheen told Sky News, most of the people who are leaving Afghanistan are not doing so because they feel unsafe. They're doing it because Afghanistan is a poor country.
Everyone wants.
I mean, that's probably also true. Yes. But then the question becomes, why is Afghanistan a poor country? It might be, I'm going on a limb here, chat. It might be that Afghanistan is a poor country. Get this, chat. Because it's been under siege and under occupation for the last 20 years. Maybe this has something to do with it. Perhaps that might have something to do with it, that it has been at war for 20 years. Maybe that leads to that situation. Maybe. I don't know.
To leave Afghanistan, because Afghanistan is a poor country. Up to 70% of the people are living under poverty line.
The vast majority of people fleeing Afghanistan are not refugees.
They are still refugees. Of course they are. If they leave a country because it's been war-torn for the last 20 years and the country is poor because of it, there is a lack of resources, there is a lack of there's a lack of industry, there's a lack of way to build a life. Of course, people are going to want to leave in that situation. It's completely understandable. And they are refugees because that war of 20 years is the cause of this situation. So, of course, they're going to want to try and go somewhere where they can build more wealth. And in many cases, they can send that wealth back towards home, which some of them do. Not everyone does. At war and had its infrastructure ruined and its natural resources extracted and exploited by Western imperialists. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's not like they're poor just because, like, oh, they didn't do anything, lol. They just sat around and didn't do anything, and now they're poor. Like, no, they're poor because there was a Western imperialist power that came in and extracted the resources from there and kept it in a state of war for 20 years.
They're economic migrants. That's why they want to go to Germany and the UK and not Saudi Arabia, despite Saudi Arabia being the first safe haven. Again, going back to the...
So, if I remember this correctly, Saudi Arabia, Syrian refugees? If I remember this correctly, I need to check this. Recent history of refugees in Saudi Arabia. So the kingdom has opened its door to a host of hundreds of thousands of Syrians since the beginning of the crisis, not as refugees in camps, but on the basis of brotherly and ethical principles in order to maintain their dignity and safety. So they did that. They took in a lot of refugees, actually, and the neighboring countries took a lot of refugees during the Syrian refugee crisis. So actually here it says, yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking for. And how much really we're just talking stuff and anarchist stuff. Ooh, nice. Oh no, not the Breitbart sponsored soy pill merchant. Yeah, exactly. So here, but the UAE, a rich Muslim nation like Saudi Arabia, has, no, that's actually about UAE. No, that's not what I was looking for. Along with Pakistan, Saudi Arabia and the UAE were the two other countries that had recognized Taliban. So from the looks of it, the case isn't so much that they don't want to go to Saudi Arabia. The case is more that Saudi Arabia is not taking in refugees. And that's a very different situation from what Paul is claiming here to be, that like they're not going to Saudi Arabia, which is rich. They're coming over here. They're coming over to Europe. And it's like, it doesn't seem to be the case. It's more like Saudi Arabia is like, don't come here, which is a very different thing.
The works of the humanitarian worker Sibel Schneehager. Quote, I always ask people, why don't you go to Saudi Arabia? They are Muslims. This is your culture.
So, first of all, during the Syrian refugee crisis, they did. And who is this person that she's quoting?
The answer is always no. Germany is better. Gee, I wonder why. Saudi Arabia puts them up in remote, rudimentary refugee tent cities with one communal toilet. The UK and Germany put them up in 4-star hotels and give them free money. That's
bad? Question mark? Like, what is he recommending here? Like, is he saying like, we should do that too? We too should put them in tents and only give them one toilet. What the fuck? Like, no, refugees need specific special help because they usually come from war-torn areas and they're usually very poor. They don't have any connections in the country that they come to, usually, or very little connections. They don't have a social net of people to rely on. They don't understand how the country works, how the culture works. So yes, they need very specific help and support so that they can rebuild their lives, usually after something very tragic. And moving across to a new culture after something super tragic, like what has happened in Afghanistan, is not like, oh, just moving, no, whatever, who cares? Like, come on. Like, is he like, yeah, we should put them in tents too, fuck them? Is that what he's going to say? I can tell PJ here is very educated because he calls Muslim a culture. Yeah, exactly. That's also like just such a bad way of calling it, because there are Muslim people around the world. There are Muslim people in Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, in Africa. Like, there's Muslim people all around the world. Just saying Muslim culture is very lazy. Yeah, how dare they treat refugees well? Mm-hmm.
That's why they want to come here. And personally, I don't blame them for wanting to come here, but that's not the issue. The issue is we tried this already back in 2015 and it was an unmitigated disaster. With a likely runoff election against anti-mass migration populist Marine Le Pen coming up next year, even globalist stooge Emmanuel Macron is worried.
I mean, it's understandable to be worried because, yeah, the 2015 Syrian refugee crisis was in many ways a failure. Like, in many ways, yes, it was a failure. But here's the thing. What Paul is doing here, he's putting the blame on the refugees and saying they shouldn't come here. Whereas I'm saying, no, the infrastructure that we have to deal with something like this is something that we should develop heavily, because this is going to happen more in the future, especially due to climate change. This is going to happen more. There's going to be more refugees coming from the global south. So we should develop robust infrastructure to handle this stuff so that we don't repeat what happens in 2015. No, instead, populists like Marine Le Pen and other anti-immigration populists are like, they shouldn't come here because everything bad. And then he's also now saying, look, they're worried.
French president is calling for a robust plan to, quote, protect against significant irregular migratory flows from Afghanistan. The vast majority of migrants aren't violent criminals or terrorists, but too many of them are.
Source? Source? Like, what's the source on this? Like, too many are. Hey, MMP, I'm good, thanks. We're watching a Paul Joseph Watson video.
For Europe to put its people at risk again. Polls show 39% of Afghans
supports for suicide bombings against civilians among Muslims. Pew Research Center 2013. Turkey, often sometimes justified 15%. Rarely never justified 78%. Indonesia, never. Malaysia. Palestinian territory, 49%. Yeah? Okay. So these are just different, like, what people think about suicide bombings against civilians. Oh, in defense of Islam is often slash sometimes is like, that's a really bad option. Because often and sometimes are so different. Like, that's so bad. And like rarely slash never, unless there was like a scale, was like never one, rarely one, sometimes one, and often one. Maybe it was like that, and then they pulled it together. But this is like a really bad way of putting it, like just splitting it.
Support suicide bombings in defense of Islam. ISIS.
That was also a poll from 2013. So it's fairly aged, I would say.
Bragged about how it exploited the refugee wave to insert terror cells into Europe.
Of course it did, yeah. Of course they would do that. Of course terrorist organizations would use moments of mass chaos like a migrant crisis to try to get terrorists in there. Absolutely. Yes, of course. But that's why we need robust infrastructure to deal with the safety of the situation, be able to help as many people as possible while keeping it as safe as possible. Of course.
Multitude of terror attacks in Europe carried out by ISIS adherents who were either refugees or asylum seekers. The majority of the Paris massacre terrorists entered Europe via the refugee wave.
Yes, sure. But then we need to, make that safer. I don't think the option here is like, don't take them in, because the problem with the don't take them in mentality is that it inevitably ends up with concentration camps. That's the problem here. Because what's going to happen? A country saying we won't take you in is not going to stop those people from coming. They're still going to come. But then, like, Greece has a huge problem right now with refugees coming over there, and they can't handle it because there's so many coming in, even though they're like, don't come here. They're still coming in there, and then they have to put them in camps, which are terrible places to be. They're dangerous, and that's what it's going to lead to. It's going to lead to concentration camps, what he is suggesting. So what do you want? Do you want to say no and then have shitty concentration camps and create poverty, like vast poverty in these refugees that are trying to come in forcefully, and then that will create more crime and it will create more radicalization? Or do you want to invest in the infrastructure of handling migrants and a big influx of migrants so that it can be safe and it can be humanitarian? Which one do you want? Because what he is suggesting will lead to concentration camps. Inevitably. Or then you shoot them at the border. Like that's like the only two ways about it. Because those people are going to come anyway. They are going to. Maybe not as much, but they're still going to come. And if they do, what are you going to do? Are you going to shoot them at the border, or are you going to lock them up? Read in a Chomsky book that suicide bombing is almost exclusively used as a weapon by occupied people as an effort to expel outside forces or combat invasions. Suicide bombings are almost never committed by people or organizations not associated with a country, region being invaded. True. There's truth to that.
I think of 11-year-old Ebba Ackerland, torn limb from limb by the Stockholm truck terrorist, a failed asylum seeker.
Yeah, like these asylum seekers who turn terrorists, terrible. Like, and the people that they kill, like absolutely terrible acts of terror. 100%. Shouldn't happen. Integration is one key part where we can, like improving integration is one key part where we can make sure that this type of stuff doesn't happen anymore. Because one of the problems is that when these refugees come in and they can't integrate, they become outcasts, so to speak, and they are more open to radicalization. Because some of these people who did these terrible acts, they weren't terrorists when they came, but they were radicalized because they couldn't integrate into society and they were otherized by society. Like, that's the problem that we need to fix. It's not going to take away all of this stuff, but some of it. If we fucking treated asylum seekers like human beings, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Also, funnily enough, I don't think Paul has talked much about like white terrorists. Just interesting side note, he doesn't talk about that at all. Like white supremacist terror attacks. Interesting, just, interesting. For example, in Finland, the major threat, one of the major threats is far-right extremists. White extremists is one of the big threats of extremism. Just something that he doesn't know, just a fun little side note.
I think of French schoolteacher Samuel Paty.
This is ridiculous. Like, he is using these terrible incidents to stoke fear, to stoke anger and grief in people. Like, look what these people did. Look what these people did to these people. And it's like, these acts are terrible. These acts are terrible, but they are not a reflection of every single refugee.
Beheaded by an Islamist who was given refugee status. I think of the woman beheaded near a church in Nice by a Tunisian who arrived in Italy as a boat migrant. I think of the 1,200 women who were viciously sexually assaulted in one night in Cologne on New Year's Eve 2015. The culprits were almost entirely North African or Middle Eastern men. The majority...
Also, hey, where is your reporting on like regular, sexual violence? Since you are so concerned about sexual violence, Paul, where is your reporting on most of the sexual violence which is done by white people? Where's that? Where's your concern? He's not concerned. He could not give two fucks about actual sexual violence. He just wants to stoke racial fears and make you believe that because there are some bad people that are going to come with the refugees, we cannot let anyone in. Like, Jesus fucking Christ. This is so racist. He's being incredibly racist.
Were either asylum seekers, illegal immigrants, or refugees. I think of the Afghan asylum seeker who raped and murdered a teenage girl in Germany before dumping her body in a river. I think of the mentally disabled 11-year-old girl who was raped by an Afghan refugee. And this isn't even to mention the societal dislocation caused by the mass influx of foreign populations who have no desire to integrate or contribute.
Source! What do you mean they have no desire? Like, this is a completely ridiculous take that they have no desire to integrate. It's a completely ridiculous take. Again, what is that based on? His I feel so. Because, he only cares about feels and not facts. And again, this is a question of integration. If we can offer robust support in helping them integrate, and, for example, not being fucking racist, then the people can integrate into society and be part of it. For example, in Sweden, where I live, one of the big problems has been that refugees and immigrants have been put into specific low-cost housing areas, which creates ghettos and creates bubbles, and that's a bad thing. So, for example, housing should be decommodified so that if we have refugees and if we have immigrants, they can go live amongst everyone, because then that makes it easier for them to integrate, so they don't form these cultural bubbles where they only see people of their own culture and they only speak their own language, so they don't integrate. But Paul doesn't care about that. Paul just wants to stoke fears against brown people. He wants to stoke fear against brown people so that you will vote for whoever is the reactionary populace who's like, grr, immigrants bad. And then it will lead to either death squads at the fucking border who shoot people or concentration camps. It's one or the other. I would rather create better systems to support people coming over because this is going to happen more in the future. And what are you going to do? You're going to build walls? I mean, some people would probably like that you would build huge walls and then shoot people from down there. But no, it's stupid.
UK government has announced that Afghan refugees will be allowed to enter the country without even needing to show a passport.
So here's a very interesting thing. Passports are a very Western thing. Remember when I had Ahmad and Rufio on, and we talked about, Palestine and Israel. You should check that video out, by the way. It's probably going to be up here. Check it out. Remember when we talked with them about how, like, Ahmad didn't even have, like, a birth certificate or a passport before he moved to Sweden and got citizenship here, and then he got a passport. Passports are a very Western thing. Many countries in the global south do not have passport systems. So, of course, they're going to say to refugees coming from countries that don't have passport systems that you can come without passports. Because if you require passports, they couldn't come. Because they don't have those systems. It's a very Western thing. Understand that. That from these types of areas, saying you don't need a passport is an understandable thing. It's not a case of like, there will be no background checks, just walk in, whatever. That's not what they're saying. But they're saying, like, understand this.
What could possibly go wrong? The previous time the UK began rescuing asylum seekers from war-torn countries, the Royal Navy picked up a refugee in Libya called Salman Abedi. He repaid them by blowing up a bunch of kids at the Manchester Arena. Yeah, you'd have thought we'd learn.
Okay, so one refugee did a terrible act. So no refugees at all? Like, that's how it's going to go? Again, like, we need to develop the systems around it to make it safer, not just say fuck it and throw the baby out with the bathwater,
Learned our lesson by now. Polls show that 99% of Afghans support Sharia law. Good. Well,
he doesn't even know what Sharia law means. Like, this is the problem. Like, people keep like, Sharia law, it's like, what does it mean? What do you mean by that? We need context, and you need to understand what that means.
Send them to other Middle Eastern countries where they'll fit in.
There's plenty of people that go to other Middle Eastern countries. Like, check this out. Syrian refugees map. Can I get a bigger version of this? No, not this map. Where's the bigger? Well, I mean, this one. Look, from Syria, 215,000 people went to Iraq. Oh, let me get that bigger so that it's more visible. No, give it. There we go. So yeah, during the Syrian refugee crisis, 1 million went to Lebanon, 613,000 to Jordan, 250,000 to Iraq, 832,000 to Turkey, 139,000 to Egypt, 23,000 to North Africa. Like I said, people go to the countries that are close to them. That does happen. He's trying to paint this as like, when the Syrian refugee crisis happened, they weren't going to other Muslim nations around them. All of them just came to Europe. And that's not true. New cutie. Hey, Sambatsu, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the cuties. And that's just not true. Like, as I just showed you, so many of them went to the areas around them. And that is for sure going to happen again. Like, for sure.
Europe is full. The UK is full. We already have
Europe is not full. That is a ridiculous, ridiculous statement.
record numbers of boat migrants arriving anyway, some of whom just rock up on beaches in dinghies and run into the nearest town. We don't even know who these people are.
Well, think about it. Think about it. If people are in such a distressed situation, they will come to a country on small dinghies in order for a chance at a better life. Like, how desperate of a situation they are in, right?
And now we're just going to let in thousands more without even checking their identity.
That's not what was said. It was just said that they don't need passports. That's a different thing than not checking their identities or anything. That's a different thing. Of course, if there's more information that says that they're just going to be let in with without any checks, then hey, that's a different story, but that's not what he said.
Meanwhile, I'm going to have to show my ID and vaccine passport to go to a football match in my own country. No.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. As would those refugees.
Enough is enough. If these people are genuine refugees, send them to other Middle Eastern countries.
They are going to other Middle Eastern countries. They are genuine refugees. And this weird idea of like, I will decide who are the real refugees is like, oh boy, some like fucking peak imperialist take. But hey, you know.
Because Europe has already tried experimenting with mass economic migration from these areas of the world. And the consequences were horrendous.
To cap this video off, he is being extremely racist. He's trying to play on this fear that all these terrorists are now going to come here. Are there going to be some bad people that can come through the refugee system? Sure. Yes. We should learn from the 2015 Syrian refugee crisis how we can improve integration, how we can improve support systems for refugees so that they do not get, do not become extremists, so that they can integrate. And this whole idea, like there's no room, and go to your own countries, Grug. And it's like they do go to countries around them. They do. That does happen. It's not like it doesn't happen. What was that last part that he said? Sorry, let me just go back. Yeah, like this. Like we tried experimenting with this before. And it's like, yeah, and we should learn what we did wrong then and improve the system, not just say fuck it, put them in camps or shoot them. Because, like I said, they are going to come anyway. They are going to come. That happens. So what do? Do we put them in camps and shoot them, or do we develop more robust systems so that we can make sure that they integrate and become part of our society and do not become extremists, right? Yeah. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please like and comment down there. It helps the video spread. That would be great. The commenting helps. Subscribing helps, all that stuff. I stream on twitch.tv/funwithfondue every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 5 p.m. Central European Time. You can come here, come hang out with us. Come hang out with me. It's where you can see this chat is from. And that's where I do my segments. Thank you very much. Enjoy the video that's over here. Watch more of my stuff, and I'll see you next time. All right?